What's up guys, I'm Blue with Spec Terrain. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the second part of our rifle recoil video. If you didn't watch the first part, definitely go do that first. It's not gonna make sense unless you watch that first. We really set up the foundation there about how to set up structure behind the gun and control rifle recoil. I'm not gonna rehash that stuff. This video is to answer two questions I've gotten repeatedly after that I posted that first video that I did not address and people are apparently wondering about. So I wanted to make a follow-up video and answer those questions for you guys. Hope this helps. So guys, one of the reasons I didn't really harp on this in the first video is it's one of those things I don't exactly have a hard and fast rule on and doesn't make that big of a difference, right? When we think about what makes a difference when it comes to rifle recoil control, we think a lot more, again, about that structure, core engagement, having our shoulders square to the target, that kind of thing, more than we do what are we doing with our support hand. That's the question I get. Where exactly do I put my support hand? And people also have seen me running PCC and USPSA and have a question, why run my hand so far to the rear? I was brought up in the camp, guys, where you wanted to drive this hand out as far on the rail as you could possibly get it, right? And the theory there was simple. If somebody was here and they grabbed the tip of my muzzle and tried to wrest out on my hands, if my hands are as far apart as possible, I have a much better control of the rifle than if my hands are obviously really close together, okay? And that is true. So why might I not want to drive this out? Well, the main job of this hand, guys, is simply to obviously hold the rifle and aim it, and also to suck this thing back into my shoulder, right? If my structure is lined up correctly, then that sucking of the rifle back against my shoulder should essentially be re-zeroing the rifle on its own. I don't have to manually, if the rifle goes off target a little bit, I don't have to force it back. I simply really suck it back into the shoulder and it pretty much comes back on its own if everything's lined up correctly. So how best to do that? If I drive this all the way out and I essentially lock out this elbow, okay? The only way that I have to really pull the rifle back is with this shoulder, okay? And if when I'm engaged on the rifle, I'm pulling back with this shoulder, that's not pulling the rifle straight back into my shoulder, it's pulling it across the body, right? So that's one concern I have about locking the elbow out. Additionally, I do find when running the rifle on longer courses of fire for a longer time, if I am driven all the way out like so, this does get more fatiguing, right? Again, this is taking my arm muscles completely out of the equation and making all of the work be done by the shoulder muscles, okay? As far as holding the rifle up, okay? You can say go to the gym and fair, right? But over time, that's gonna be fatiguing to anybody. I find I can be much more comfortable for a much longer period of time with my arm collapsed more to the rear where I can actually use that bicep. I'm getting the support close to the rear. So then the question is, well, are we going back to the old like Magpul grip, right? And to me, the answer is no. I think I'm giving up too much control over the rifle when I do that, right? When my hands are this close together, I'm not able to aim the rifle very aggressively and very precisely in the case of, say, a target transition, right? I find I have much more control of the rifle with my hands out a little bit farther, and I can actually drive the rifle with proper aggression when my hands are a little bit farther apart, right? I don't feel like I'm giving up anything for me personally by going from a grip like this and coming back like that. As a matter of fact, I feel like I'm gaining a lot. What am I gaining? Number one, we talked about the ability to suck the rifle back in with the bicep, pulling the rifle straight to the rear. The second advantage to me is when I'm working around tight obstacles, okay? If I have to, as an example, start below this stick here, and I'm gonna come back and come above the stick, okay? If my arm is driven all the way out, then I have to come way back here in a very uncomfortable position before I can drive the rifle back out as I come up, right? It's a much easier time if I bring that right hand back a little bit and I can simply engage my target, suck the rifle back, come over and engage again. And it's just a much easier time working around cover for me when I bring that hand back just a little bit. I'm not having to come all the way back and all the way back out. It's just much simpler working around vision barriers, around ports, around walls, things of that nature. So I feel like I have more maneuverability, less fatigue, and better control of the rifle, sucking it back into my shoulder with my arm muscles instead of having to suck it back with my shoulder. So that's just a couple thoughts for you on rifle. Now, the obvious question is, well, if I'm gonna bring the hand back, how do I figure out how far to bring it back for me? For me, this is how it works out. It may not work out the same for you, right? But if this is the way that I would run my pistol, right? This is my normal pistol stance, okay? If I simply leave my support hand here and do not move it, and I go ahead and I holster my pistol, and I grab my rifle, right? And I set the rifle in here, this is my grip on the rifle, okay? It's really not rocket science. It's the exact same structure we would normally put behind a pistol. We're just now using it on the rifle, okay? Is that a hard and fast rule? Again, no. It just works out really well for me to use the same grip for everything. If you find out it works better for you to go a little bit farther or a little bit farther back, that's totally fine. Experiment with that, shoot doubles, shoot strings of fire, work around tight obstacles and find out what works best for you. So question number 2 I got quite a bit was, hey man, how do you work your chosen stock placement and kind of setting up that structure behind the gun when you're in kit? And I'll be the first to admit, right, I do not spend every day on the range wearing a plate carrier, right? So feel free to reach out to folks that run these professionally as long as they can actually shoot, right? But here's my take, right? I want as much as possible, if the way we did it in part 1 is ideal for recoil control on the rifle, I want to just equate that as much as possible and do the exact same thing when I have a plate carrier on, right? So how do we do that? For me, the easiest thing to do is simply to bring in my stock 1 to 2 placements, and then I'm gonna put it right over top of my strap. Obviously, if you're running something like a Cry chest rig, something like that, that's laser cut and has the really thin material, this is even easier. But a priority for me when I choose a plate carrier is making sure I can actually still shoot well, right? So I do run shooter's cut plates, and I try to get as low profile chest straps as I can to where I can run I can still run my rifle really well, right? So there's a little bit of thickness here, which is why I bring my stock in one spot, and then I simply run my stock right over top of my strap on the plate carrier, and I put the stock in the exact same place that I would if I wasn't running a plate carrier, and I can control recoil exactly the same way. Everything else is still the same. So guys, I hope that helps answering some of those questions in regards to rifle recoil control that came up after the first part of our video. If you have any more questions, as always, send those through or drop a comment down below this video, and we'll answer those or drop a part 3 to this video if we need to. Thanks guys, we'll see you on the next one.